Hi, my name is Patricia Tribole. I am a sales engineer with McAfee for the EMEA sales engineering team, and you're very welcome today. Uh, Hopefully, the information we are about to share with you will be helpful. So today we will be talking about MVision Cloud. So this is about security, visibility, and control. Our intent today is really to show you a little bit of the concepts behind MVision Cloud. What are the challenges we're trying to really address? Um, and how does it look like on the interface? What are the options? A little bit as well. So we hope this helps. Let's get started. So when we are talking about MVision Cloud and cloud service providers, we are talking about a myriad of different types of services. These are cloud service providers. So these are providers that you subscribe to, right? There's different ways, different subscription types, but it's really a subscription. It is no longer the perpetual software you used to buy or hardware. It is more to do with a subscription. So service that is provided, starting with the fundamentals of it, which is really everything is accessed through the web. So we are talking about those services accessed through the web that the employees of organizations are accessing. They're using it for business or for entertainment or personal use, different uses. Throughout the entire context of this, it is always around security, visibility, and control. With visibility comes control, because then you can make decisions on which cloud service providers you really need, are helpful for the business, or could assist users to progress, innovate, take things further, right? So what would help the users in terms of functionality and capabilities from a technical perspective, but also the user's adoption of cloud service providers is very important. So when we look at the web traffic of a company, let's say you want to make sure you make the best decisions around which cloud service providers you are going to subscribe. Let's say you've decided on Office 365 already. That's an easy decision. You may have other cloud service providers, let's say Salesforce, ServiceNow, maybe other providers, including other storage providers. You may have Office 365, but you also maybe have Gmail or Dropbox or Box Simple accounts. Different organizational structures may require different tools. The past and what has been approved before also takes a play and is a really role in this. Sometimes we speak to customers that have 3, 4 different types of storage solutions because historically each department has taken their own decisions, and then it's very difficult to have that security, visibility, and control over all of them. It really is the backbone of the job of the cloud access security broker to provide that to you. And that's what MVision Cloud does. So in this slide, you'll see the word unsanctioned and sanctioned. Sanctioned being the software that the company has acquired for business use. Unsanctioned being anything else that's used by users. So if the company decides to block users from using Dropbox, they'll find a different storage. If they're blocked access to it, they'll work around. If there's no way to convert a PDF file, they'll go online into a page that happily takes their confidential file in Word format and changes it into PDF. All of these actions are actions taken by users that are just trying to do their jobs, getting on with it, really. And so it is also the business of a cloud access security broker to provide that visibility so that you can make the decisions, probably lowering costs and probably making everyone's life easier and having that conversation. So sanctioned are the apps, the cloud service providers that you have acquired, the company, the organization has acquired for its employees to use. So we would easily see Office 365 in there. We would easily see other types of software as a service, even Box, obviously OneDrive, ServiceNow, as well as I mentioned. So halfway through that, there's something called long tail software as a service apps, which include some others like Jira and Ignite you may have heard about as well. We cover all of them. And then we move on to infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. And those are AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. And moving further into that world, then the world of DevOps, where we have Kubernetes, Amazon, Azure, Docker, Google Cloud. So all of these additional services running on top of that infrastructure. So we are here as our mission and with MVision Cloud and McAfee is really to provide you the perspective on those different elements and MVision Cloud to be able to assist you on all of them. So the web, the first element is really around your web proxy, your web gateway filtering system. McAfee has one available that integrates with MVision Cloud, but we work with others too, with whatever you may have. And I'll get to that in a moment. Cloud Access Security Broker is the job of the most core job of MVision Cloud is really to provide you that security, to broker that security on the access to these cloud service providers. Cloud Security Posture Management and Cloud Workload Platform. So these, by the way, all of these names, these acronyms were created within the context of Gartner. And Gartner has obviously extended the quadrants to include all of these different perspectives. And McAfee, the Gartner quadrant for CASB has just been released. And we are obviously leaders with quite a margin of difference from the other leaders in the quadrant. So we are quite up there and we're quite proud of this. We have been doing CASB for 5-6 years or more as McAfee acquired SkyHigh, the original company, the startup company that created the quadrant itself. And of course, we move on to container security, the application DevOps world, where we have CNAP. I don't have it on the slide, but that's yet another acronym that was created around that. So we are moving into a world where we have more and more innovation. Each cloud service provider is bringing more and more capabilities, technological advancements. Every day it feels like AWS or Azure is releasing new, different ways of doing workloads, different ways of addressing challenges in the cloud, making life easier for coders as well. So, and also for subscriptions of platform services like SQL and others, like more and more every day, there's additional services within the cloud service provider that are meant to fix, address, help with a particular use case, a particular new thing that no one has ever seen before. And we are here to be there on that journey, side by side, and look after the security of all of your cloud service providers, right? So that's our job. So the architecture is simple in its complexity. So it starts off with the basic, what we have here as Skylink is really the name for the API connection between MVision Cloud and the cloud service provider we're looking after. So this would be an API connection. It's a token that starts this connection with the credentials of an admin account that you have as a subscriber of that cloud service provider service. Now, when we say this, it's really around looking at all the activities that you may have on that tenant. So if you're on Office 365, we would create that API connection and we'll be able to see everything users are doing inside OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, all your mail flow as well. We have obviously technology, additional capabilities to look into your mail flow for DLP and malware. And we have the ability to understand what your users are doing in terms of behavior, which is one of the fundamental things around the cloud, is we need to understand how your users are going about their day-to-day usage. So you make decisions on what you need to control further. Certain things are easy, collaboration. So It's a given that you're going to use Office 365 to collaborate. You're going to share a file, send a link to someone, that you're going to be on Teams and you're going to be inviting other people outside of your organization. So you want to have controls for that, and we do. We can see the guests in Teams, other than your own employees and everything that they're sharing. We can do DLP on that, of course, and do malware scanning for the files that they're sharing and so on. But we can also see what guests are coming in and doing, and if you may or may not want to allow guests. So other security features that extend what Office 365 itself offers. Obviously, the Cloud Access Security Broker perspective comes to life when you have more than one cloud service provider, because that's its job. Each cloud service provider will have different consoles with security controls and different security visibility items. You would be able to see artifacts and see all kinds of different types of information. But ideally, you want to go to one place and see it all. That's what we can offer. That's how the CASB really shines, the Cloud Access Security Broker, is when everything comes together like that. So that's the API. Now I've populated the rest of the slide really to talk a little bit about the other elements. This is a simplistic diagram. If you'd like to know more information, let us know. But essentially, the McAfee Sky Gateway is a reverse proxy. It's used for access control. It's used to see when someone's going to Office 365, are they really coming from the usual place they're coming from? Is it a different country? Are they using a different operating system, a different browser? Is this a machine that is managed by IT they're connecting from? Or is it an unmanaged machine, a personal device? And if so, do you want to put controls in it? Maybe you don't want them to download documents. Maybe you don't want them to access. Maybe you don't even want them to be able to access the cloud service provider at all. Most cases and most of our customers would ask for the gray area, where maybe you want to let them go to portal.office.com and see Word and PowerPoint and OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams and do what you need to do on a page, but then you might not want them to download documents to the hard drive of a personal device, an unmanaged device. So that's really the richness around the reverse proxy. Our Sky Gateway is really to do that reverse proxy capability, give you access control. Now, the ground link is really the ability to consume logs that refer to web traffic. So these are logs that are coming from web proxies, next generation firewalls with web capability, web filtering capability, even SIM. So these are logs that are rich with information about your users' access to web that we can then consume. Now, of course, McAfee also has available McAfee Web Gateway security in the cloud service, and we integrate MVISION Cloud with it, of course, and so that is automatic. The consumption is there, and we can analyze those logs. The idea is to take the information further. I'll show you a little bit in a moment, but it's really to give you visibility so you can make those decisions around what cloud service providers you're going to be using, or you need to secure, and how, what kind of policies you need to put in place. So that's the architecture. Now, in terms of our conversations with real life use cases around security in the cloud, I've mentioned some of these, but I wanted to highlight that it's not just the data that you're storing in the cloud service provider that you have subscribed for. So a lot of times, cloud service providers like Google Suite, like Office 365, like Salesforce, they will then have third-party apps that they integrate with. And it's very easy to just go through the App Store and pick up integrations, because it's handy, because it might integrate with your HR tool, because it might integrate with another type of collaboration tool that you need for a project. So it's easy, straightforward to do those integrations. The issue is that when you do, you're opening yourself further, and visibility into that may not be readily available. So the Cloud Access Security Broker's job is to let you know what that looks like. Also, some of these apps are quite dangerous. They're high risk in terms of security, and you might want to just hold on off on that. So we will have a policy that lets you do that decision. If it's high risk, I don't want my users to be able to connect to it and block access. So there's details, there's almost madness in the details, right? There's so much interconnectivity in the cloud service world that it's difficult sometimes to know that you've gone further away from that boundary of the tenant that you are in, and you've gone into some other service, some other storage that may or not be compliant with some of the criteria you may have, including GDPR, for instance, or others. I mean, when you go into regulatory compliance, it's a completely different world of additional criteria you need to put in place. So there is a high risk of compromise, of sensitive data loss, and compliance infringement. So MVision Cloud wants to really help you with that job. Highlighting here a little bit of what we do and what we use to accomplish that. So the API is cornerstone to a lot of what we do. All the collaboration, additional visibility into other third-party apps is really API, as well as security audits of the configuration you have. Do the accounts on that cloud service provider have too many privileges? Elevated privileges, why? In certain environments like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, that really becomes an issue. User entity behavior analysis, we do it. Analytics, we do it. So this creates a baseline of your users' behaviors or systems, because those accounts could be of systems as well. And we'll let you know after upon that baseline achieved, maybe a month, maybe more, maybe less, no less than 2 weeks. We will let you know what's out of the ordinary. So a user suddenly decides to download a large file at 4 in the morning. That's unusual. We'll let you know. A user's logging in from 3 different places at the same time. That's unusual. Also not possible. We call that a superhuman anomaly. Interesting to note, especially when that user's accounts or different accounts are also showing up at the same time for other cloud service providers. So the user's logging in at the same time to all your Office 365. Suddenly they're logging in at the same time to your Salesforce. This is strange. It's an anomaly. It bears significance, and that needs to be seen, right? Needs to be tagged and alerted on. All the data on MVision Cloud can be syslogged into your systems, into your SIM. So for a security operations group, this is really key. There's a lot of information intelligence we can provide. In terms of cloud discovery, usage, and risk analysis, that analytics, that is really any mode. This is something we are doing as well in a different context, in different ways. I'll try to cover that a little bit. So let's start with Shadow IT. Shadow IT is related to that web piece that I was talking about. We consume logs. We understand what users are doing. Sometimes it's about understanding that a user in IT is creating AWS instances, S3 buckets, or blobs in Azure to test something. You don't have to ask anybody. Maybe you just needed to test it for 2 or 3 days. It's easy to spin up. It's easy to propagate. It's easy to use, consume, and then shut down. We will let you know. That's one of the biggest issues around infrastructure as a service, is how many breaches we see because of cloud resources like this, infrastructure to being wide open. Sometimes it's something simple like SSH was left open. Sometimes it's more complex. It has to do with privileges on accounts and exploiting that. It's not straightforward unless you have a tool that really shows you the map. It's difficult sometimes. So Shadow, being able to read those logs, consume the logs of web usage, whether integrated with our own web offering or with someone else's web offering, and we're just consuming logs from them. As I said, web proxies, next generation firewalls, SIMs, Whatever you have that includes this information, we'll be able to consume it. And then we'll let you know a little more about what that high risk, medium, low risk is. So your users may also be using other storage, cloud storage. They may be using collaboration tools, and you may not know, because the web proxy usually categorizes it as this is this type of page, like cloud storage, but you may not know the extent to that. One of the added benefits of the cloud registry, which is this that I'm showing you here on MVision Cloud, is that it also gives you the risk assessment. And this assessment is done through different types of criteria. It's not just, is this a threat? You know, cyber would tell you, is there a threat in this? It's not just to say, does it have multi-factor authentication? Does it have encryption? That stuff is sort of the technical piece of it. But it's also to say, from a business perspective and a legal perspective, is this cloud service provider hosting headquartered in the US? That might be important to you. Do they have GDPR compliance? That might be very important to you, especially if it's third-party apps. You might want to be then, because you are always responsible. So the company is always responsible in terms of GDPR for the data, and the service providers that engage with the company, it is the company's job to ensure that they are also compliant and that they adhere to GDPR. So it's the responsibility of the company itself to make sure that happens. So visibility, and then being able to understand the alignment in terms of regulatory compliance. It could be security concerns. It could be just ISO 27001 or the ISO 27000 series of compliance requirements in security, the framework. It could be that. It could be NIST. It could be anything else. These are valuable types of frameworks and regulatory compliance information that we can provide to you about cloud service providers that your users may be using and you may not know. That's everything around the shadow piece is about understanding this. So obviously we have rules with our own web gateway cloud service. We're able to stop a lot of behaviors and activity. We can do what we call the closed loop remediation. And that helps you say, actually, I don't want users to go to sites that are not GDPR compliant. Maybe you want to do that. Or sites, storage sites that are not that are not hosted in the EMEA or Europe or region, whatever you would like. We can do that criteria. So some differentiators around our own shadow capabilities. So we are very accurate on the registry. Throughout the last years, there's been a case where sometimes we see other security vendors add more because, you know, having more 10,000 or 20,000 listed is better. We never aimed for too much. We aimed for the amount of information that's relevant for you. And the majority of the cloud service providers we list in our registry are listed there because they are used by corporate enterprise, because we see it in our customers, because there is a justification for having that information there. Also, if you'd like to register a new cloud service provider that we may have not seen, there's a mechanism for that. We'd be happy to look into it. So automation is very important. And the cloud risk assessment is key to make those decisions beyond, is this, you know, an anonymizing website or not, or a social networking site or not. So it is really the case of next generation secure web gateway. Now, moving into some details around software as a service. We control the data stored in the cloud. So we have those data loss prevention policies. We're able to do the policy. We work with dictionaries, keywords, regex, templates, meta tags from other services, AIP, DRM. We work with a lot of different types of technology to establish that classification. So we have our own workflow inside the MVision Cloud, but we also If you're interested in terms of data loss prevention, we have an entire solution for McAfee for data loss prevention, which also includes endpoint and network elements and can be all managed from the same console. In this case, I'm focusing on MVision Cloud alone. And so what you see here is the incident response. We see also the match highlighting, the service that it refers to, and we can also obviously gather evidence for all of it. So this is the control of data stored in the cloud. There's lots of options depending on the service. So let's say the quarantining of a file usually is done by quarantining the file in that tenant's admin folders. So if you're quarantining a file in Office 365, the file will remain in Office 365. We don't do any copies of files. We don't hold any data. All the actions are taken and the file's quarantined within the tenant we're working on. The same for Box or Dropbox. So collaboration is a key issue. So collaborating with others, sharing those files, sometimes may show patterns of behavior of additional relevance. So here we're mapping out that collaboration. What domains is it collaborating with? Typically, you're sharing a link with an email address on most services. So this is important for you to control and to understand, as well as anomalies and what the users are doing, geolocation, and so on. So we can notify the administrator, we can block those links from happening, we can limit that sharing, we can say you can't share with everybody, you can only share with this third-party organization we are outsourcing services with. You can do lots of different options on this. Now, we talked before about access control. This is the block of the download to unmanaged devices of Office 365 documents example that I was talking about before. So this is the cloud access policy. This is the reverse proxy happening here. And what we're saying is, if a device is unmanaged, I don't want you to be able to download. It's very straightforward. You're blocking access to the download of the file. The users can still see the file, right? They're on portal.office.com. They can still see that file, but they can't save it to disk. We also work and integrate with the leaders in the market for MDM and EMM. So we're able to integrate and take additional action. So move that forward in terms of more in-depth coordination between what the rules of the EMM are and the actions we can take and what we can see. I mentioned the third-party connected apps, the example of Salesforce, so Google Suite. So Google Suite is the example that I have here, where we're saying if that app that you're about to integrate with on Google Suite, so you're inside Google Suite, you're using one of the services, and you decide, I need a whiteboard or a way to share cards or some other diagram tool. And it's not here on the Google Suite, not what I need, so I'm going to integrate with a third party. If that third party app is listed as high risk for us, and we have obviously analysis for that, you can block it. You can create that access, right? That access control. So in terms of what we can offer, what the CASB can offer, we're looking at very different services. So now I'm mentioning Salesforce. In Salesforce, we can do very interesting capabilities. We can do DLP, data loss prevention, and we can have some interesting remediation actions like encryption or delete. We're talking about the fields inside Salesforce and even custom fields. So we can do this audit and compliance report that can be showed. Again, there could be equivalence. This user in Salesforce can then have a user account in Office 365 or other accounts. And you can start to see behaviors between these different services for the same users. Just a quick note on Teams and how important this really is, because it is a tool that opens up to the world. And there's some sort of parent-child relationship now when two companies that use Teams meet on Teams. So if there is Office 365 on both those companies, the company with the highest or more strict security configuration is then applied to that interaction. But there are a lot of people that we share information with on Teams, guest users outside of the company that do not have Office 365 or any security rules for that. And so it is the case where you might need to keep an eye on those users. This is important for data breach, but also for security, right? Because there's also malware and so on. So we are scanning for all these files and information being shared to make sure you're safe. So there's incident, delete, and email notification actions supported. Okay, there's a lot of functionality here, and Teams seems to be the adoption of Teams has skyrocketed since the beginning of the pandemic. So we see a lot of our customers that were hesitant before jump on it and really start the adoption. So SaaS security differentiators, frictionless. The user doesn't really see it, not unless you want them to see and you're blocking something. So the data loss prevention can happen on visibility mode. You're just seeing. You're worried about GDPR? You use a GDPR template and then turn it on for monitoring and see what your users are doing. As easy as well as that. Scan all of what is there. So on day 0 of MVision Cloud, create some on-demand scans, schedule some scans if you like, but also have that real time, real time, where everything the users are doing is being watched as well. Not so much this notion of watching, but more on the side of educating the users and also understanding the users' behaviors, user-centric, so that you can make the decisions within the business of what tools should be used and what is really the best, shortest way of being productive. Sometimes using 10 different storage cloud service providers creates complications and complexity you don't really need. So I'm just going to touch a little bit on cloud native applications. So this is a conversation that has those different levels. We start off by the infrastructure, doing security audits on AWS, Azure, Google, understanding if there are misconfigurations. As I said, the accounts on these providers, the user accounts, the IAM accounts, are really important. And the permissions they have determine the permissions that the services then have. And the roles inside those permissions are really important. So we're looking at being able to see those misconfigurations detected and let you know. Obviously, then comes the workloads and the containers. So if you're coding, you're creating those images. There's different versions of images. You might be using frameworks like Kubernetes is very common these days. So you might be using Kubernetes, you might be using Docker. So you're going to have Terraform, you're going to have all of different elements into the moment until the moment that you're submitting code. And those workloads, they need to be secure. We're able to do security configuration audits on those as well. We're able to see CVEs, vulnerabilities, and flag for them. So something simple. SQL, is your SQL patched? Is there a CVE associated to your SQL? This could be something simple. Obviously, there's much more complex scenarios. There's scenarios where there's pieces of code that try to access other parts of your environment, other containers, other services. You might not want to give them access to gateways, for instance. You might not want to give them access to other containers, other pods. So there's so many elements here, and we're able to give you, through the API connections, we're able to see everything as it's happening and flag it, create incidents, let you know, visibility, but also being able to take some actions on it. The micro-segmentation is a conversation as well to have. We acquired at the beginning of this year a company called NanoSec. They are experts in micro-segmentation, and the integration has been happening with MVision Cloud. It's part of roadmap, and it's part of ongoing integration efforts. So it's ongoing work. Scanning data. Again, being able to look at AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, be able to trigger those scans and understand what's going on, even as a consequence. So you're doing a security audit, a configuration audit. You've detected something, a violation of the policy, and your action is to scan any unsecured resources, anything that you have not been scanned before, associated any additional extensions of what that action is trying to do. So you're able to create additional actions to it. Obviously, we can scan for malware, so that's also helpful. Um, Not knowing what you already have there on day zero is a problem. Understanding what you have, both from data loss prevention and malware, is a compliance issue. It is not just a checkbox exercise, but also a security issue in the long run, right? You could have something lurking there. So scanning the containers for vulnerabilities, I mentioned that. The CVE, being able to scan to see if there is something associated there. We support Kubernetes across the board on AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Obviously, Docker, Helm, CloudFormation, template scans for AWS, EKS, and ECS for 8. Again, these are all just glimpses of the interface, a little bit of detail. There's so much that we do that it's sometimes a little hard to bring it down to just a small list of things. I talked before about cloud security platform management. That is, as I said, a Gartner term. So being able to maintain and audit secure configurations. So you see some examples here. Things like IAM users that I was talking about before, they're really crucial within these accounts. You can work with CIS level, of course, we have that tagged. We have templates of policies that cover all that I've been talking about. So the ability to just on day zero, pick some templates and start these scans is there. It's very straightforward. Immediately you will get information that you can use. Things like policy status, active or inactive, obviously the service name and so on, there's more information, but it's really helpful. 650 plus predefined templates is a considerable amount of ready-made work that we have available. Now, I mentioned before the security of developer operations. So the DevSecOps. It is the case that it used to be that the security audits would run almost at the end of the cycle. Now we're really looking into shift left. Shift left where we are going to be scanning that code submit as it happens, as it's being created, and the artifacts can be scanned to detect the risk, the CVEs, the configuration audits. We can do that continuously. You can schedule them and you can do it on demand if you like. But it is really essentially a great tool for visibility. And I keep referring visibility because there's so much, when we talk to customers, there's so much that security teams or IT teams in charge of all of these environments, or cloud architects or cloud teams, they might not have full capabilities to see further into this. And this makes the decisions happen. Even within DevOps, further decisions can be done. Corrections can be done sooner. So shifting left to the beginning of the cycle as opposed to doing it at the end when all the work has been put in. So we're multi-platform, we're preemptive because we are seeing the issues before the full cycle is finished, and we're continuously doing that risk analysis. We are working with the developer side by side, and we're letting the developer know when there's issues with the code. Earlier, not at the end when all the work has been done. So this is really important. Now, I've been talking a lot about how we see everything that's happening in terms of the tenants of the different cloud service providers. So I wanted to just really mention that we can take a step further and we can help you with this. So far I've been talking about what we can do with the cloud service providers, how much we can see, how many controls we can give you. But the truth is, a lot of our customers do not have teams that may have the knowledge to really put those security configurations and controls in place as they start the services, as they start using the services. The amount of knowledge you have to keep for all of the cloud service providers that an enterprise potentially uses is massive. So it's normal that your own teams may not know how to configure, and that's fine. We will give you some assistance with that because we see all of these activities. There's a lot of detail in this geo. Of course, this is how we can establish if it's an anomaly or not, right? Because we can see all the activities, create that baseline, and then flag you for them. But we can see also the reputation of IPs. There's so much. We have threat intelligence behind this. It's McAfee threat intelligence. It is a massive amount of sensors. And it is a massive lab structure behind all of this. So we created two structures to help you, two interfaces that can help you with inside MVISION Cloud. We created Cloud Security Advisor, and the Cloud Security Advisor tells you how do you compare with your peers. Your peers is our own customers. Obviously, all of this is anonymous, but it is helpful to see how you stand. There's details to this. You can download reports and see it into further. But my point here is we can actually give you recommendations. We could tell you, you need to go change this service and create this type of configuration that's missing. And this is gold because that's exactly what the type of knowledge that your teams may not have. Even within security teams, the realms of knowledge, the domains of knowledge are so disparate, so different, that you may just not have someone with this type of cloud knowledge. So this is really important, and we want to help our customers to be better in those configurations. So we give you that checklist to improve the scores. Simple as that, visibility and the checklist. So the next interface we've created to assist particularly security teams, security operations teams, is we've mapped these incidents and we've mapped this usage into the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. And so now we're using the UEBA, the User Entity Behavior Analytics, that filters through all of these millions of events, and we're mapping them into behaviors of bad actors. We're mapping them into threats. And we're telling you in a straightforward interface, how does that look? So this is the added benefit to security operations teams. Of course, again, syslog and so on, we can share that information. Now, I want to just quickly summarize some of the things we mentioned. We mentioned software as a service. So the DLP elements, the collaboration control, being able to access control as well, third-party app control, overall risk management of everything. And then moving into IaaS and platform as a service, the details of the configuration audits, vulnerability management, the integration with DevSecOps, container, the microsegmentation, we've talked about all these things, workload protection and network threat management. Cross-platform, these are things that come with, regardless if it's software as a service, infrastructure, or platform. So we can do those scans for DLP. We can work with a multitude of different types of data classification. As I said, meta tags and so on. We can probably integrate with whatever you have if you have a DLP solution. UEBA, the User Entity Behavior Analysis, the MITRE ATT&CK, and activity monitoring. Being able to have a single console when you look at all your cloud service providers and you can assess that status in terms of security. We have those dashboards to help you with the Cloud Advisor and the MITRE ATT&CK framework mapping. Behind all of this, there's an infrastructure, and this is what it is really. So we're up 99.999%. if you want to have a quick look at it, it's trust.mcafee.com. That's the site where we keep the status for our web and cloud access. We're monitoring 3 billion plus cloud events every month. There's analytics, 30 million cloud users that we are securing. We are the largest, if not the largest, we are one of the largest providers of security, visibility, and control in terms of cloud for cloud service providers. So there is a lot to think about in terms of infrastructure for McAfee. And this is my final slide. So this is around our strategy and our vision. So I've talked about MVISION Cloud for the better part of this time. But obviously our vision at McAfee is from device to cloud. So we're looking after the device with our endpoint protection and our endpoint technologies. And that's a different discussion. My colleagues, Mikio and Claudio, are also recording sessions that you may have access to through this event around some of these other technologies. MVISION Cloud, and is such a breadth of different acronyms from Gartner, really. So there's so much to talk about here. SASE, CNAP, that includes so many of the others. So cloud native services. MVISION Cloud is cloud native and stands next to other cloud service providers. Through those API connections, we're able to do so much. So, of course, there's obviously analytics and intelligence and the MITRE attack framework mapping throughout other McAfee technologies around security operations as well. There's so much around, much more in terms of McAfee. So I wanted to thank you for staying with me this far, and hope that this has been helpful. And we will see you next time. Thank you very much.